I love playing as a mercenary. It's very simple, very elegant, and very fun. You do a job, you get paid for the job. You do another job, and you get paid for that job as well. Of course, I also love turn-based games. So when you marry the two together, it is a fun and joyous experience for me. So here are 10 turn-based mercenary games that you have to check out.
Hot dog! That just comes from good, clean living.
Jagged Alliance 3 is published by THQ Nordic and developed by Hayamont Games. Jagged Alliance 3 is set in a modern world with you leading a band of ragtag mercenaries that are helping to liberate a country from a brutal dictator. The rightfully elected president's daughter is also helping you accomplish this task. And your main goals include helping build a resistance movement within the country's borders, establishing a financial base by liberating diamond mines, taking out enemy bases, defeating enemy patrols, etc., etc. Out of all of the games on this list, it is the least procedurally generated out of all of them. It is mostly story-based. Out of all of the games on this list, this one has the most advanced graphics and has the most voice acting within it as well. But the game just doesn't have flash, it has substance, as the gameplay has many interesting and excellent features such as gun modding, RPG mechanics such as leveling up skills, and you having your own personal mercenary that you can modify from the very start, inventory management as well, and also a very unique feature that's often missed in most current day games is party management. What I mean by party management is your party members will like or dislike each other depending on what they do in combat or based off of pre-existing history before the game even started. So there's going to be some static between different parties within your team. So you're going to have to make sure you mitigate the problems within it and sort of, I wouldn't say fire problematic individuals, but fire people is definitely what you're going to have to do to maintain unit cohesion. I recommend this game to people who really like Jagged Alliance series and also kind of like XCOM as well, and just basically any of the old school turn-based tactical squad-based games.
This looks bad. Don't think I'm gonna make it out of this one.
Battle Brothers is brought to you by the people from Overhyped Studios, who is also working on another game called Menace. That's partially the reason why I started this whole list, is because I was fascinated what they were going to do with Menace, and I also wanted to see what other strategy, turn-based, tactical, mercenary games were out there. Battle Brothers is set in a medieval fantasy world where you'll be fighting goblins, orcs, witches, bandits, undead abominations, and other creatures in this very colorful and fascinating world that they've created. Possibly one of my favorite games of all time. The graphics and sound effects aren't all that amazing, but the way they have been done, it's still very eye-catching and still very ear-catching, as the models and sprites that they use for Battle Brothers are still pretty good. They can still draw people in, get them immersed into the world. And while there is no voice acting in the game, the sound effects of combat more than make up for the lack of voice acting. It adds a sense of gravitas and atmosphere. So let's move on to the gameplay. On the world map is where you move to different towns, you find locations, and you take on contracts. In the tactical map, and this which happens when you get into battles, will resemble the world map where you got engaged or you engaged in battle. So, if you engage in a swamp, then, well, will look like a swamp. So, you would have to be very careful where you pick your engagements, as Swampland will have effects on your combat abilities and your enemy's combat abilities, as well as the different other biomes like forest or desert, etc., etc. In Battle Brothers, your mercenary company will be made up from various people you can recruit from the various towns on the map, who all have their own special traits and backgrounds that enhances their abilities to be more effective in combat. And eventually all of them will gain levels, so even if they're terrible, they will still be less terrible as time goes on. So having high level brothers is always a good idea, but keeping them alive, that's another matter entirely. Then there's other things like retinue, which is basically adding non-combat members to your mercenary companies, and of course your mercenary company's reputation, as well as moral alignment. There's so many things to talk about here, but suffice to say, let's just sum it up by saying it's feature packed. I recommend this game for most people who are into strategy games or into tactical games or into turn-based games in general, because I generally feel like this is a good game for pretty much everyone in that sphere. For the newer people, it might be a little bit too complex, but overall, I think most people will be able to get their heads around it and play it pretty well. Stoneshard is published by Hypertrain Digital and developed by Inkstains Games. Instead of heading up a team of mercenaries, like you did in the previous titles, you are instead a solo mercenary that goes on adventures, but has a caravan that sort of acts as support to what they're doing, giving them new items and other services, like repairing their older equipment. At the time of this recording, it is an early access game, and it plays like an open world RPG. Now, what that means is you can go any direction you want, fight any enemies you want, so long as you have food and supplies to maintain yourself as you go, because you do have a hunger and a thirst meter that goes up as you travel the world, and you have to keep cautionary look at those systems, or you will suffer the consequences such as debuffs and even death if you're not careful. You also have to maintain a lookout for food that has gone bad or spoiled, because it will poison you and also give you debuffs. As well as maintain your inventory. That's right, inventory management is a part of this game, as well as various other systems. So, fantasy RPG means that there is going to be things like magic. There's going to be things like undead creatures attacking you. And that adds a nice wrinkle to the gameplay, as you do not know what you're quite going to get whenever you accept a contract and go into a dungeon. Now, these dungeons seem to be procedurally generated. The storyline for this game is there is a item called the Stoneshard. The Stoneshard is a mysterious item with a lot of power to it and a lot of mystery to it. In order to find out more secrets about it, you're going to need a caravan to help you. You're also going to need to build up your characters so you can build up your contacts and your caravan and just collect money so you can buy things to help enhance your situation. I really like the sprites in this game. They really add to the atmosphere. There's not that much voice acting, but what little they do have, it's pretty well done. And finally, the sound effects are pretty engaging and they absorb you into the game as well. Who would I recommend this game for? I would recommend this to people who like a classic RPG, specifically a classic Western RPG. It's filled with a lot of immersive elements and it's a fun game to play. But I would recommend you to be careful with the save system, as it can be a bit punishing.
go through the last judgment for it. Not for the glorious death for the eternal kingdom, love, or the Lord, but for a way to step off the path of suffering.
Quasimorph is published by Hypertrain Digital and developed by Magnum Scriptum. It's basically Stoneshard, but set in space. There's more to it, of course, but that's the main bullet point. The setting of Quasimorph is basically a grimdark universe where corporations basically rule all of space, and they get you to do various missions that really increase their power amongst each other. Quasimorph doesn't have any voice acting to speak of, but it does have a lot of sound effects, and the sound effects are pretty good. They nail a sense of impact with your weapons, and the sprites are animated well. I enjoy them. I also found the background music very enjoyable as well. The gameplay is very similar to Stoneshard, where you move in a turn-based grid, but unlike Stoneshard, you get only 2 moves per turn. So, you can move to an area, or you can open a door and shoot, or you can move and shoot, or you can shoot twice. Of course, keep in mind, enemy units have a 2-move system as well, so if you move into doorways unprepared, you will leave yourself in a really bad position to get ambushed and take a lot of damage. So move carefully. Quasimorph has a ton of options for weapons, such as melee weapons, assault rifles, shotguns, flamethrowers, grenades, auto turrets. You'll have a grand old time going through the different weapons and strategies you can implement on your enemies. And trust me, there's going to be a lot of difficult and scary enemies for you to face in this game. All these systems melded and mashed together lead to some pretty interesting moments. Case in point, I was looking at this device to fill out my map, and I opened it up and I saw all these different dots, red dots, yellow dots, and I'm like, so looking at all the dots in relation to each other, I realized there was a big red dot behind my dot on the map, and I turned around from the console and realized there was an enemy standing right there. Thankfully, he had a melee weapon and I had a shotgun, so I ended that real quickly. But it could have gone way worse if I was a little bit less lucky. I recommend Quasimorph to people who enjoy Stoneshard but prefer a more sci-fi setting. And I think it fits that role perfectly for anyone who wants to play through a Doom-like in a turn-based fashion, or who like sci-fi settings in general, or grimdark sci-fi settings. All those fans will be welcome here.
I'm here. Ha! Reporting critical hit.
Battletech is published by Paradox Interactive and developed by Harebrained Schemes. It's based off of the miniatures and board game of the same name. Battletech isn't their first foray into the video game realm, with games such as MechWarrior franchise being one of their mainstays and one of their most popular. Battletech has excellent graphics, coming in second best on this list for graphic design. The voice acting and the sound effects were on point in this game, with the pilot's one-liner really stealing the show and really just enhancing the mech combat, with the mech's sound effects really sounding like 2 giant behemoths clashing with each other. It really added to the immersion. All these together give the game a nice, unique personality that's hard to describe in full detail. But yet, I find it so enthralling. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Battletech takes place in a universe that's far, far flung in the future, where mankind has colonized multiple worlds, and battles are settled with giant mechs. Now, mechs are very expensive to both buy and repair, so they become sort of a form of currency, if you think about it long enough, because they're basically more valuable than gold. To the player, at least, because they are extremely expensive, and they can bring in a ton of money if you use them properly. I find an interesting premise, as many battles can lead to a quick spiral of you just losing a lot of money by having to do repairs. Maybe a mech gets destroyed, or worse, a pilot dies, which in that case you would have to find a replacement pilot. And replacement pilots can be expensive because, well, it comes with a loss of experience, and experience is not something you can buy cheaply. Now, as to which campaign you can play, you can either play a story-based campaign or a free-roaming campaign that is much more procedural-based. The story-based one has a lot of story-based missions in it, of course, that will help enrich your company, making you much more effective and, well, much more richer. However, the free roaming allows you to just go anywhere at the very start, and you have no real restrictions on what you do or where you go, except to get a very high score at the end of your campaign run set by you. And quite frankly, I found that one a little bit more interesting, as I was not tethered to any sort of real story-based ideas, and I didn't have characters just thrust on me in certain missions. I could just do as I liked for any period of time. However, the story campaign did have a large amount of freedom, just like the procedural campaign, so you could just go anywhere you wanted to and fight whoever you pleased. And at the end, you could be a free-roaming mercenary company. For the most part, the gameplay is relegated to you battling with your mechs and destroying some vehicles. Now, the vehicles, surprisingly enough, have a little bit more kick to them than you would originally think. But for the most part, you'll be able to wipe them out easily. For the campaign side of the gameplay, you will be using your money to build and repair your mechs. You'll be using your money to hire new talent for mech pilots and various other things, such as upgrades to your ship. And you'll also have to pay monthly wages and upkeep for certain things. And it all feeds together with the time aspect of it, because it'll take time to complete certain projects and repair certain things. It'll take time for people to recover in the medical bay. So time becomes a currency as well in this game. Battletech is recommended for people who are new to the Battletech franchise or to long-term fans of the Battletech franchise. Jagged Alliance 1 Gold Edition was published by THQ Nordic and developed by both Surtech and MabLab Software. It was released way back in June 1994. This is probably the oldest game on this list, and thus a true blue classic, but it will load on your DOS. This is something older games will do. If you don't know what true DOS is, do a little quick Google search on it. It's suffice to say, it's some form of operating system that works off of your disk drive. Jagged Alliance 1 was there at the very start of the turn-based tactical genre, alongside games like Laser Squad and XCOM. But unlike XCOM and Laser Squad, instead of protecting the world for free, you are getting paid for your services. Hiring new mercs can be a tricky proposition, as some of them will not get along. There will be some infighting. Since you are newly hiring people, they'll have problems trusting you, and they will accept contracts from you. The higher end mercenaries, that is. The lower end ones will be less picky. Next, there is question of money, of income. There's a lot of spinning plates for this. The combat has very similar feel to the old school XCOM games and Laser Squad games, where you have TUs and action points, and you use those to do things like move, shoot, get into cover, get down to a low level like kneeling or movement or shooting or any of the other things you will get your mercenaries to do in combat situations. Mercenaries do level up over time, so you will eventually get better mercenaries. You will also get better mercenaries by, well, making more of a name for yourself, getting better access to wealth so you can buy the more expensive mercenaries. Hopefully all this builds into a victory for you, as balancing all these objectives and the money situation will be difficult at first, but as time goes on, you'll be able to pick up the system, I would say relatively quickly, and you'll have an easier go of it. Now, if you're looking for a more current version than this one that I'm showing you right now, may I suggest you check out Jagged Alliance 3. For more details on it, I would once again point you to my first video in this series. It's linked in the description. Otherwise, I would recommend this to people who like old school games. The reason I recommend those two platforms is because, well, they're easy to work with and they often have sales, so you can get it at a fairly discounted price, so you won't have to break the piggy bank in order to own it.
These troubled times of quarreling factions and outlaws roaming the land, work is not scarce for a band of mercenaries. The stories of this age have been recorded. They are known as the Wartales.
Wartales was both published and developed by Shiro Games. It was full release after some time in early access in April 2023. It may look like 3D Battle Brothers, but I assure you there's far much more going on with this game than it would appear. It has dungeons for you to explore, mini games, character classes, and much more. It doesn't have procedural maps, so if you didn't like that in Battle Brothers, then this game could be for you. As the map here is always the same thing. There's certain events that are procedural or change depending on how you resolve them, so always keep that in mind. This game looks like it'll be on the receiving end of many more updates and DLC, because there's still a roadmap about this game. And Battle Brothers hasn't officially said they're not going to do any more updates or DLC, but it doesn't look like they have any interest in continuing, because they have another game coming up called Menace. So here in Wartales, you could see changes coming as probably as maybe up to a year or two after this video. So keep your eye open for that. Throughout the game, you'll be given moral choices to decide whether or not you're going to help somebody else out, or you're basically going to betray them. Like, for instance, you can help this group of soldiers who have trapped a bandit warlord in a cave, or you can betray the soldiers and help the bandit warlord escape by killing them. It's all up to you. Contracts in this game can range from relatively easy or relatively dangerous, with a very powerful opponent who will shred your entire mercenary party. The game will signpost this, however, and let you know that you are out of your depth, so you may want to factor that in every time you take a contract. And also remember, you can take multiple contracts as well. For those who like extra pain, there's an Iron Man mode to this game as well. That means you have one save, and if something goes wrong, that's it. It's game over. You have to start all over from the beginning. I would recommend this game to people that liked Battle Brothers but wanted more substance, much more options, much more detailed gameplay, and also for people who don't exactly favor sprites in their games and prefer more 3D models for characters inside the game. And the game is wonderfully done. There's some good lighting and shading. The graphics look fantastic in battle, especially with the kill animations that kick off when you finish off a particularly weak opponent. While it does have similarities to Battle Brothers, I have to say it is a very different experience. And if you didn't like Battle Brothers, or you thought it was missing something, you might want to give Wartales a shot. .62 was published by Fulcrum Publishing and developed by Aprion. It was released in August 2007. If you liked Jagged Alliance, then you might like this underrated gem. It has a similar setup, but goes a little bit harder than Jagged Alliance. The game boasts plenty of firearms to use, as well as multiple endings that will have you guessing up until the very end. Has a very detailed combat system that will put your tactical skills to the test. Some dialogue trees that is very rich and full of options. Now, high caliber seems to be the only one working. Hard life seems to, well, just be giving me a blank screen. I don't know if it's my setup or anything. So I would recommend you use high caliber. And by the way, I'm using the Steam version of it, so I don't know if that has any effects on it. So I would say to be fiddling with this for a while to get it to work properly. The type of person that would enjoy this game the most would probably be someone who's played Jagged Alliance, or someone who is in that sphere who enjoys Jagged Alliance and wants something a bit different and newer. This game can also be a bit clunky at times, so be aware of that as well. It'll take some time to adjust to it, but overall, you should get at least some enjoyment out of it. Iron Oath was published by Humble Games and developed by Curious Panda Games. It was released in November 2023 after some time in early access. This is basically a more Dungeons and Dragons type of mercenary game than Wartales was. In fact, it reminds me a lot of Darkest Dungeon. The first one, not the second one, if you know what I mean. You go through dangerous, and if you survive long enough, you might get even better rewards than you were initially supposed to get. It depends on how willing you are to risk your units in battle against incredibly dangerous opponents that will do a significant amount of damage to them, cause permanent injuries, even kill them. Yes, there's permanent death in this. However, not every quest requires the system. Some have very different tasks that you must complete. I won't spoil them here, but let's just say it gets very interesting. Now, the combat is mostly about positioning and movement, so you can do extra damage if you push or pull an enemy into a obstacle in the environment. So if you move a unit next to a hole in the ground and you hit them, they'll fall and do some damage, or they'll be killed outright. It depends on the obstacle. But what goes for them also goes true for your troops, because if they get hit with anything that sends them back or flies them into an obstacle that does damage, but I don't think that I've ever seen one of them get killed outright by an obstacle, but you will see enough damage that it will hurt when they get hit into an obstacle or they are knocked back a bit. It sort of knocks them out of position and lines them up to get hit with another attack. It also knocks them out of their proper range, which messes up your strategy. So you have to be very careful on how you maneuver your troops in battle. And you have to keep in mind the positioning and where everything is on the battlefield. It can lead to some very intense moments. The story of this one is that you are a mercenary band that has suffered a number of setbacks and are at the brink. You're going to have to rebuild the entire team back up from what they were before. And unlike other games on this list, your mercenaries can grow old and retire. That's right. Retirement can cause you to be short of a particular class or a powerful unit that you've been building up if you do not plan for it carefully. So, in my mind, people who will enjoy Iron Oath the most will probably be people who are into the dungeon crawling scene and they like things like Mechanicus or Darkest Dungeons. Others might fall in love with its movement and positioning combat. And others might fall in with their management of the mercenary skills. Out of all of them here is probably the most detailed. It has a unique personality all its own, and it really drew me in. I had fun with it. Cyberknights Flashpoint was published and developed by the Trace Brothers. It came out of early access. This fun indie game mixes cyberpunk and XCOM to produce a very interesting combination in the form of Cyberknight Flashpoint. This game has a lot of systems under the hood. It has probably the most complex strategy layer out of all of them. It's about balancing factions' wants, your reputation, favors, potential threats, and other things. Make some of the best gameplay moments you can ever have on any sort of strategic layer. It kind of reminds me a little bit of CK2. Not a lot. It's nowhere near that level, but it's kind of the closest out of all of the games in this list. Using both stealth and open combat to help you achieve objectives of your heists that are both fun and challenging. That's right, heists. You'll be doing complex heists instead of regular mercenary work of guarding or attacking. You'll be breaking into places and stealing high-tech equipment, various body mods, and other things to hopefully expand your operations from their humble beginnings into a much larger and much more opulent organization. While this game has got a lot going for it gameplay-wise and has an interesting premise, I do have some criticism for it, mostly to do with this presentation. The graphics look kind of blocky to me, and they're not that bad, but they're not terribly eye-catching either. And the voice acting is non-existent, so you're going to be reading pretty much all of the lines in the game. So if you're not much of a reader, or you don't really like to read when you're playing games, then this might not be for you. But for everyone else, I think they can get past those. While not everyone will be fond of this, I do think some people will like this style. And I also do think some people will like being able to just read instead of listening to voice acting. Some people may even prefer it to bad voice acting. I remember a few games that had terrible voice acting, and I went to myself, maybe you should just not have voice acting and just have people read things instead. It could work out for your favor. And I think I'm glad they took the route. Just like really thinking about it, I'm glad they took that route. Out of all the games on this list, I consider this the most unique experience. Plus, the Trace Brothers routinely update their games for years. So even outside of early access, you can bet you're going to get tons of balance changes, updates, and patches. So if you don't like the game the way it is right now, don't worry. It won't be stuck that way for long. And can I just say, as a side note, I really like that about the Trace Brothers. They work on a game for years. Think about how many developers sort of work on a game that's clearly not finished for about a year, and it's still buggy and a mess, and they just sort of like throw their hands up and say, well, we did everything we could, goodbye. And they leave it to the modders to fix it. And people have spent pretty much a large amount of time hoping they would fix it, because a lot of people bought it at launch. So I'll always appreciate the Trace Brothers for sticking to the game for multiple years and just building it up to be the prime of excellence in the indie gaming space. So all that and more makes it probably one of the best tactical games out there right now. I would recommend this for people who enjoy Invisible Ink, or people who like Cyberpunk, who like XCOM, or who want some combination of both. If you've never bought a Trace Brothers game in your entire life, then this is a good place to start. It has decent enough presentation and a wonderful premise that's executed near perfectly. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you at least found one of these games interesting and enjoyable to play. And if you want to help support this channel, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. All those help boost me in the algorithm. It also lets me know that you're interested in stuff like this, and I'll probably be more likely to do more of it. So it's a win-win for everybody.